What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to take an early look at our top 5 running backs that could disappoint for the 2024 fantasy football season. For one reason or another, these guys might not meet their current expectations. We'll talk that and much more. So sit back, relax, enjoy. If you do, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get into it. And as you can see, we have got our running back rankings here pulled up. Now, again, this is as of May, and I always like to say this, these things are subject to change once we get to July, August, September. There's going to be news, there's going to be injuries. So we're going to probably revisit this at a later point to see how much of this has changed. And like I said when we did the same exercise for our top 5 wide receivers that could disappoint for 2024 fantasy football, just keep in mind, this is me, again, saying that this is not a list of guys I am not drafting or something like that. This is more so me trying to make you aware of some bigger names that, while yes, they could put up really nice numbers, there's also a bottom, and there are certain risks, certain reasons why, more so than some other players, we could have concerns and they could disappoint a little bit. So enough of that. Let's kick it off. And we don't have to go too far because the first name on our list is Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. And look, I get it. Jahmyr Gibbs last season was really, really good, especially in PPR formats. And now basically, as the trend goes in fantasy football, a young running back, especially after coming off a really solid rookie season, he is going to get the star treatment and is catapulted into that top 5 running back conversation. Now, again, this is more PPR based, but still, the majority of us are more or less in this format. And I'll say my main concerns with Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, it's not the talent. It's not anything like that. Let's start first and foremost with that running back rotation. It's him. It's David Montgomery. And if we're looking at values, it was the same thing last year that I said that I will repeat again in 2024. The price tag last year was more premier for Jahmyr Gibbs, and you got a huge discount for David Montgomery. This year, it is the exact same thing. And what ended up happening? Yes, Jahmyr Gibbs ended up having a good season, but David Montgomery's numbers were also extremely, extremely solid and serviceable for high-end RB2 type of production. And when you can get him 4 rounds later, something like that, that becomes pretty tempting, right? Because right now the kind of average draft position, the ADP for Jahmyr Gibbs, especially again, if it's PPR, if it's a larger league, it could very well be at the end of the first round or early second round. Whereas with David Montgomery, it could be in the 5th round, for example. And with the Detroit Lions, they showed that even though, yes, they value Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, he isn't going away. The only time he wasn't being utilized was when he was injured last year. And shocker, the 2 biggest games that Jahmyr Gibbs had from a fantasy production standpoint were those exact 2 weeks when David Montgomery was hurt. Now, I'm not saying he didn't have other good weeks when Montgomery was also playing. This is a high-octane offense. It showed it can sustain multiple fantasy weapons, whether it's at tight end, wide receiver, multiple running backs. So you like to see that. Again, out of all these running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs is the one I feel most confident about. So let me say that. But when you tie the draft capital to Jahmyr Gibbs of a late first rounder, when you take into consideration that you have Sam Laporta, when you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, we'll see if Jameson Williams breaks out or not. That's TBD. But you also have David Montgomery, who's not going away. He's going to be utilized in the red zone. And, the usage for Jahmyr Gibbs is going to go down a little bit from a pure rushing standpoint. Now, the good thing is he is propped up by that receiving work, which we all love to see. My main point here is I look at some of these other running backs right around this range. Like, I think Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor are probably a little bit safer. Now, yes, they play with running backs that are a little bit more rush happy, but I think that they're going to be able to get theirs. They don't have backfields where quote unquote it's somewhat of a committee. Those are the main things that worry me a little bit about Jahmyr Gibbs. And then again, the draft capital that he currently has right now, as opposed to that of David Montgomery, because I don't think we're going to see a huge discrepancy in finishes from fantasy production between Gibbs and Montgomery this year, just like was the case last year, unless, there's injuries, there's something of that nature. So that's why I wanted to highlight Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, by no account is this me saying you should not draft him. I feel stronger about him than I do with the other names on this list. But let's continue to those aforementioned other names. The second name on this list, Kyren Williams, who was, absolutely a sensational breakout, a pickup last year for the LA Rams. The way it worked out for them and for him, the usage was absolutely incredible with a healthy offense and the passing attack being able to spread out things offensively. Kyren Williams was absolutely able to run wild. And, all these things helped him be one of the breakouts at that position. Chances are, if you landed him, off of waivers or in the late rounds, you had a pretty good season at that running back position. And now, again, he's being ranked as a top 10 running back, which from what I've seen in the mock draft that we've done, it's usually a end of the second round selection, maybe middle of the second round, again, depending on the running back runs that occur. And I will say, hand up, if the Rams did not draft Blake Corum this 2024 NFL draft, I would feel a lot more comfortable about Kyren Williams. He'd be higher on my general running back rankings board. But instead, the Rams, it wasn't first round draft capital, but still significant earlier draft capital on Blake Corum, who a lot of people kind of had as one of the better running back prospects in the entire draft class. And that's what worries me here a little bit. Like, you look at the advanced metrics for Kyren Williams, and he doesn't exactly pop out of the page. And maybe the Rams, we've seen it before that they want to have another guy there that can spell the starter. And that's what worries me slightly here. It's the Blake Corum factor. It's, maybe now that Matthew Stafford has a healthier Cooper Kupp back, Puka Nacua, there's going to be that focus on the passing attack. We'll see. I think that more or less can be like it was last year. But for me, the main thing is the Blake Corum of it all. An accomplished rusher in college, high draft capital, touted as a top 3 running back in this draft class. He's going to get his opportunities. And I wouldn't be shocked, if at some point in time, like let's say there's an injury to Kyren Williams, then Blake Corum just steals the job, or it turns to a full-blown running back by committee. And again, I try and pinpoint those situations for guys that are being drafted in the top 2 rounds. If I see a running back by committee there or a high potential for it, alarm bells are going off. And that's why I want to point out Kyren Williams. But let's continue to move on here with Rachaad White, the next name on our list. And I said it before with Rachaad White when we were talking our top 12 running backs, that he's a guy that is going to be probably moving up and down my rankings as we get closer to August to September. And the reason for that is when you look at Rachaad White, what he did last year is it was a tale of two halves, because the first half of the season, it was tough. It was us telling you, he's a matchup play, but if the matchup isn't there, then, you could look elsewhere because he could be in the low end running back 2 bucket, and it'd be kind of boom or bust. And that's what it was for the first half of the season. But then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, towards the latter part of the year, they figured it out. They said, okay, we're going to force feed this guy, especially through the air. And that's why he had some really nice finishes. He had a high floor because he was seeing crazy passing work. And my worry here is, in general, with a running back like Rachaad White or any kind of first-time breakouts, is, okay, look at the sample size, look at the usage. What are the chances that all of that can be duplicated in the following year? Or was it kind of lightning in a bottle type of situation? Now, what I will say, I like Rachaad White. He's young. I think he's talented. I just don't know if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensively will decide to use him the same way. They had some changes there in terms of their coordinators, or the guys that they brought in, going to view the running back position the same way. Also, look, this is an offense that's going to be led by Baker Mayfield. So with Baker Mayfield, again, I look at his history, and he has never had 2 really solid back-to-back years from a production standpoint. Now, yes, kudos to him. He put together a great year last year, and he silenced a lot of doubters, but can he do it back-to-back years? That's what worries me here. The Tampa Bay Bucs offensive line also, lost some pieces. So that's going to be something to look out for. And offensively, some of those wide receivers like Mike Evans did just get paid, but look, he's no like 20-year-old, right? Like, he's getting up there in age. Chris Godwin, large injury history. So my point that I'm trying to make is, if those wide receivers take a step back, this offense takes a step back, then it could become a one-dimensional offense. Sure, that means Rachaad White hopefully still stays involved as a pass catcher. But my biggest worry is, again, I will continue to say it, if the pass catching work does not come for Rachaad White, and him being tied to an offense that can be unpredictable because of Baker Mayfield, then all those really nice, cushy, high upside finishes that we saw at the end of the year, they could go away, and I could see him finishing easily outside of a top 10 running back. And again, right now, that's how he's being viewed. He's being drafted at the end of the second round, which does make me a little bit nervous. But let's continue on here with another guy in Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. Huge kind of big upside, high efficiency performances last year for him, but then went through injuries, things like that. And now he returns to a running back room where, look, Raheem Mostert was the Miami running back that had the better finish, like top 2, top 3 finish in all of fantasy football, the best value in fantasy football from a running back fantasy production compared to where you drafted him last year. And I think a lot of people are just saying, okay, Achane now is going to be the dude. He's a borderline top 12 running back. Some people have him as a top 10 guy. And again, at the end of the second round type of draft capital, what we're talking about. But I'm looking at this Miami backfield, and you have Raheem Mostert still coming off a really good season. Yes, Achane was somebody that you saw the efficiency. He was a home run hitter type of running back, right? He did a lot of damage on limited carries. And what I like to say about those type of players, whether it's running back or whether it's wide receivers, sure, they have the high upside, they're home run hitters, but when they're not ripping off a 60-yard touchdown, folks, the floor can be really low and the lows can be really long. And that's what worries me here about Achane. And not to mention, again, this running back room, Raheem Mostert, Achane, they also drafted Jalen Wright, a guy that at the running back position coming out this year was somebody that people were excited for. High upside traits. And then you look at this coaching staff for Miami. It's a coaching staff that came from San Francisco that before Christian McCaffrey was utilizing kind of running back by committee, hot hand type of approach. So I don't think that here we're going to see a situation where there's just one guy that dominates week in, week out. Last year, it kind of happened out of necessity with Raheem Mostert because Achane got hurt, because he wasn't utilized at the start of the year. So there were different aspects. And now all of a sudden saying, okay, Achane is going to be the guy. Forget about the player that they drafted, the high upside rookie. Forget about Raheem Mostert, who's coming off his best season. And forget about how these coaches have used running backs in the past. That makes me a little bit nervous. And then when you tie that into him being a player that is kind of dependent, at least from what we saw last year, on being the home run hitter, not necessarily having high rushing attempts, but delivering on those minimal attempts with big plays, there's a lot of things all of a sudden now, variables that make me nervous. So for that reason, I do think he could potentially disappoint. But let's move on here to the last name on our list, and that is one James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. And with James Conner, again, much lower on this list compared to some of the other names that we've mentioned so far, but he's still, being regarded as, you look in this category of other names, like he's the starting running back out of these guys. Dave Montgomery, kind of the 1B to the 1A of Gibbs, right? So James Conner is somebody that's intriguing. Last year, we were all aboard the James Conner train, and for the most part, it paid off, I will say. But this year, the Arizona Cardinals, what they did is they drafted Trey Benson in the 2024 NFL draft. And I would say it's probably between him and Jonathan Brooks, who the top overall rookie running back is expected to be. And I give the edge to Benson because Jonathan Brooks is coming off an ACL, and that is a crowded backfield there in Carolina. So I could really see a situation where this is a split backfield for the Arizona Cardinals, and by the latter portion of the season, Benson takes over the starting role. That's what worries me here. Again, I'm looking at James Conner, who's a proven veteran, yes, but you look at injury history, you look at age, compared to Benson, the shiny new toy, young, high draft capital, and it's a situation that I think really sets itself up for a changing of the guard. Usually, this is the kind of exercise people do when trying to identify rookie running backs that could break out later in the season. I would say this Arizona James Conner situation is one that is at the top of the list. That's what makes me nervous. And again, like this Arizona offense, it's not going to be an offense that just because you added Marvin Harrison Jr., you're going to be a top 5 offense now. No chance in hell. The Arizona Cardinals, in my opinion, are still going to be one of the worst teams in football. And I think for the most part, that offense is still going to be somewhat one-dimensional. And I could see a lot of scenarios where they have to phase out the rushing attack because offensively, they just can't keep up with the other offenses. And we've seen that. If you're saying, okay, well, that's only in scenarios where Kyler Murray hasn't been healthy. No, we've seen that a lot, even when Kyler Murray has been available. Like low-scoring offense type of situation where you're relying on high volume. And I just don't think James Conner is the high-volume running back anymore. But with that, we kind of wrap up this breakdown of our top 5 running backs that could disappoint this 2024 fantasy football season. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, we'll see you guys in future videos.